The first Silent Hill movie is set in a dead town that appears to come straight from hell. It sets a tone it never shakes. Fear and discomfort hang in the atmosphere as thick as the fog and the plumes of smoke that arise from the ground. I believe one of the reasons this setting registers the feelings that it does are because it's real. Hear me out. The 2006 movie version of the town, not the original 1999 video game, was actually inspired by the all-American town of Centralia, Pennsylvania. Of course, Centralia doesn't have the abstract daddies, disfigured mannequins, or pyramid heads that we know of, but it does have a history that plays out like a true American horror story. After a planned trash burn accidentally ignites the coal beds of a town with a long and sordid history that was slowly ebbing away, and government's disregard for safety and preventative actions completed in half measures, Centralia became a town destroyed from the inside out. And this warning tale will stay with us for another quarter of a millennium. On this tale from the timeline, we're exploring a bit of landmark lore. Today, we will look at Centralia, Pennsylvania, and the ashes of industry. So first we gotta jump back to 1749. Robert Morris, who would eventually be a signatory on the Declaration of Independence, which was not stolen by Nicolas Cage.
I'm gonna steal it.
Do it.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
And is seen as the father of America's first financial system. He comes to the Columbia Valley area of Pennsylvania, and he loves it. So much so, he hoodwinks the local Iroquois and Lenape peoples out of a little over 160 acres of land for a whopping 500 pounds, approximately $132,000 US today. Oh, and of course a friendly rifle-to-the-back escort off of said land.
Go on, get!
He then proceeded to do nothing with it. Mostly. The land was partially surveyed, and the Reading Road, a future portion of Highway 61, is ran through the area.
This bypass has got to be built, and it is going to be built.
Why has it got to be built?
It's a bypass. You've got to build bypasses.
Don't you worry, Bobby M will get his, though. In 1798, he was flat broke. Since he now had over $2 million in debt and was a primary cause of the financial panic of 1796 to 1797, he is sent to debtor's prison for 3 years. The state of Pennsylvania takes custody of the land, and then for a long time, nothing happened. Eventually, in 1830, the land is auctioned off to a French sea captain named Stephen Girard for $30,000, roughly $1.5 million today, and he proceeded to do nothing with it. Now we'll make a little jump ahead to 1841. Entrepreneur Jonathan Faust arrives in the area and builds the Bullhead Inn and Saloon in the middle of the Reading Road between the towns of Reading and Sunbury. They were two developed mining towns, and a small township begins to grow around his new saloon, which was colloquially called Bull's Head, until 1854. Then enter Alexander Ray, a mining engineer with the Locust Mountain Coal and Iron Company, who discovered the area had large deposits of anthracite coal and buys the land from Girard for an undisclosed sum. Ray renames the area Centerville, but in 1865, the U.S. Postal Authority would tell him that he can't call it that because Pennsylvania already has a Centerville. So he says they misheard him. He actually said Centralia the whole time, bro. Faust hopes his operations will go unnoticed and he can continue doing business. It does not go unnoticed. The Locust commissions a railway spur line that is built near the town and works to establish the first of several mines, the Locust Mine and the Coal Ridge Mine, in 1856. As people begin moving into the area around the saloon, the Locust operation gives Faust their blessing to continue his work, because miners love spending their money at saloons and complaining about how terrible things are and then going back to work the next morning instead of rioting, and they wouldn't have to pay to build the place. Centralia experiences a boom with the opening of the first two mines, leading to more. The Hazel del Colliery Mine in 1860, the Centralia Mine in 1862, and the Continental in 1863. In 1865, the Lehigh-Mahoney Rail Line is built directly into Centralia and allows the town to become a direct nationwide coal provider. Alexander Ray will not get to see his town prosper, however, because he was dead. Most of the details are scarce, and a lot of historians disagree on the particulars. From what I've gathered, Ray was involved in a pay dispute with several miner groups. Unbeknownst to him, their alleged dispute representation was a group called the Maguires, who may or may not have been a secret society of Irish immigrants and their descendants, who may or may not have used graphic and extreme violence to persuade companies and business tycoons to acquiesce to miners' demands. Major reason I say these allegedlys and may or may not is because the Pinkerton Detective Agency.
I don't like the Pinkertons.
The Pinkerton Detective Agency had sent Agent James McParland, who used the alias James McKenna, and attempted to infiltrate the Maguires and build a case against them. The Pinkertons and the mining interests named the collection of disgruntled miners as the Molly Maguires, connecting them to a group with the same name in Ireland. Many have since come to the conclusion that McParland instigated many of the violent activities and threats that the group is alleged to have participated in. And then, on October 17, 1868, according solely to the testimony of James McParland, 4 Mollies stopped Alexander Ray's carriage while he was riding from Centralia to Mount Carmel, intending to rob the town's payroll, and they shot him. 3 men would be tried and hanged for it in 1878. But then, life continued on in Centralia, until, in December of 1908, a fire on Main Street left 150 residents without homes, but the town rebuilt, and life continued on in Centralia. Until...
What's that?
War were declared.
In a town of around 2,300 people, nearly half the population enlisted. Most never came home. World War I would be followed by an outbreak of influenza in 1918 that took 10% of Centralia's remaining population. But the town hung on, and the population would return to about 2,500 in 1930. However, in 1929, Wall Street crashes. The Great Depression caused several mines to close. Dispossessed locals, left without livelihoods, begin bootleg mining, a process called pillar robbing, which involves cutting into the most easily accessible areas to remove coal, usually support columns at shaft entrances. By 1950, the country's economy had mostly rebounded, which had nothing to do with the fact that we taxed the wealthy, but that's not the point here. The point is that coal mining and Centralia hadn't rebounded. The population now numbered in the 1980s. The City Council and Columbia County vote to purchase the mining rights from the remaining interests and turn them over to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And life continued on in Centralia. Until late May 1962. The 1,435 remaining residents of Centralia are busy preparing for a Memorial Day parade. The city tasked public service workers to line several abandoned pit mines with shale and clay, which were non-combustible. All of the city's open illegal dump sites were to be cleared and moved to the pit mines where they could be safely burned. Yes, I hear you screaming that that's not safe. No, actually I don't. That's not how video works, but this was actually a fairly common practice at the time, and while that doesn't really make it better, it makes it a little less dumb. Only slightly. Just days away from the parade, May 27th, the trash in the pits is burned, and later in the day, extinguished. But the following day, flames in the Buck Mountain coal bed reignited. Gang, before we go any deeper into this story, I would like to take a moment of your time to talk to you about a group called Direct Relief. They are a charity that works to help people around the world affected by natural disasters and extreme poverty. The group was founded in 1948 to help World War II survivors recover and rebuild. Today, they're a global organization working to enhance the welfare of people affected by natural disasters. They give humanitarian aid in all 50 states and more than 90 countries. With a mission to improve the lives and health of people affected by poverty or emergencies without regard to politics, religion, or the ability to pay. Direct Relief covers a wide array of assistance, from community health to rare and critical diseases and reproductive health and health mapping. They also participate in hurricane prep and relief, humanitarian aid in Ukraine, and opening health centers in rural areas where many hospitals have closed or didn't exist to begin with. They make regular updates to their website with details of their operations so you can see exactly where your donated money is going. As of 2026, they've donated over $1.3 billion in medical aid. They've delivered nearly 4.5 million pounds of supplies worldwide, and you can help. You can donate on their website at directrelief.org or send check or money order to Direct Relief, 6100 Wallace Becknell Road, Santa Barbara, California, 93117. Together with Direct Relief, we can help make healthy people and a healthy world. After the Buck Mountain coal bed reignites, the fire department extinguishes it again. Several days later, it starts burning again, and the fire department extinguishes it again. This repeats multiple times over several weeks. The city council has the fire department dig out the base of the burn pit, and they find inadequate sealing over exposed coal veins. The crews lining the pits with shale and clay had fallen behind schedule while waiting for more material and had laid thinner layers to get caught up, leading to multiple exposure points. On August 6th, almost 3 months after the fire had been started, city officials discussed how to deal with the burn and agreed to hide the fact that the municipal government was responsible for starting it. The city then votes to hire an excavation company to contain and extinguish the burning coal seams, but there were a couple big problems. The state didn't allow the crew to do any exploratory digging or surveying, and gave them a set area to work within, and only on certain days and at certain times. As the crew dug in, they attempted to flood the mine with crushed rock and waterlogged sand, and this exposed their second problem. Due to extensive pillar robbing, many of the map tunnels had collapsed to become inaccessible, and they could not be filled. The crew did what they could, and when the funds ran out, the state declared victory and hoped for the best. Most no longer worried about the mine fires, except when the occasional steam eruption or heat vents broke through the surface, or the ground would shift and crack. And life continued on in Centralia like it always did. Two things happened in 1967. The railroad ends service to Centralia. It did so in many places. The interstate system had all but killed most competition by now. Also that year, the state decides to dig a big-ass hole to stop the fire, but when they reached 225 feet down, they saw that the fire had burned past the containment line, and the project was abandoned. The project was moved and resumed in 1969, and the state developed more aggressive plans to suppress the fire. This time, they dig into the coal beds and built flame-retardant barriers to help cut off fuel and snuff out the fire. However, as the barriers were being installed, several areas that were dug out showed signs that the ground fire had already passed through. This plan, too, had failed before it had started. So the state finished the project, declared victory over this Pennsylvania Balrock. People continued to notice the smoke and the gas bursting from the ground, and life continued on in Centralia. Until 1979. Gas station owner and city mayor, God, I love the way small towns work, John Coddington, checked the level on his in-ground gas tanks with a dipstick. The level was fine, but the fuel on the stick was warm. A temperature check would reveal that the inside of his tanks had heated to 172 degrees. And while this wasn't high enough to cause an ignition, it's way hotter than you want a big-ass gas tank to be. But it also told the townspeople something else. The fire wasn't extinguished, and it wasn't outside the edge of town. It was under their feet. The township would eventually split into two factions. Some wanted the government to pay to fix the issues and save their town. Others wanted to be paid for property loss and relocation after the government's plans repeatedly failed to resolve the problem.
People fighting against each other so far as brother against brother and sister against sister and things of this nature. There's no word to describe the kind of problems that exist in the town today.
The government settled on option 3. In 1980, they installed steam and gas vents, which can still be seen in the town today. These were designed to safely release toxic fumes and gases, and not have them settle on the town. quicker than you could spit. Or, all right, maybe a little longer. The fire passed these vents, and now they'd become express passages that allowed airflow to the underground burn and gave it more fuel. Now, if you'll grab a heart-shaped box of chocolates, lower your standards, and join me for Valentine's Day 1981. Pennsylvania Governor Dick Thornburgh and State Senator James Nelligan come to town with environmental agency officials to assess and address issues after a recently released study finds the current cost to attempt to stop the fire will cost over $600 million, $2.1 billion today, and will require the destruction of major portions of the town, which, as you can imagine, made the townsfolk upset. Only a few blocks away, 12-year-old Todd Dombowski sees a small steam vent in his grandmother's backyard. As he slowly approached, a gaping maw of earth opened and attempted to swallow him whole. A sinkhole 4 feet in diameter and over 150 feet deep opened beneath him, belching out jets of extreme heat and toxic gas. Todd caught hold of a tree root and clung desperately until he was pulled from the hole by his 14-year-old cousin Eric Wolfgang. Both survived without any apparent ill effects. The state then, of course, immediately cleared $50 million to buy homes and businesses from residents and aid with relocation. And typical of the government, they offered pennies on the dollar for most of the properties.
It's worth $36,000, but we were offered $11,000 for it. They took off depreciation for this and that, and you ended up with that, and you took it or you stayed there. And we definitely couldn't stay.
Many residents resisted. Some stood their ground. Most, unwilling to risk the welfare of their families, took what little was offered and left. In 1984, a study is released by Pennsylvania State University with the Milton Hershey Medical Center. It shows Centralia residents are exponentially more prone to respiratory illness and several cancers due to exposure, as well as long-term damage from chronic carbon monoxide poisoning. Then current Governor Bob Casey is convinced to invoke eminent domain. Lawsuits from townsfolk follow immediately, causing a freeze to evictions. 63 residents remain in Centralia. By 2002, with 21 people still in the town, the Postal Service discontinued the area code and stopped service. In 2009, only 11 buildings are still standing in the town, and 10 residents remain. Governor Ed Rendell restarts the process for formal evictions, and lawsuits follow immediately. But there's some good news! An agreement was reached with the remaining residents. The government assumed ownership of all property in Centralia. Residents who stayed could no longer accept buyouts, but they could stay in the houses until their deaths. But they could not transfer any property in their wills. 5 residents accept and stay. All others move away or have passed away. By 2020, after a bevy of sightseers, looky-loos, and annoying quote-unquote dark tourists, because I guess you're not cool if you're not desperately trying to be edgy, made the town a go-to for neat pictures of the town that was. But the residents who live there are people. You know, human beings, and they didn't like being treated like a sideshow attraction. Many people flocked to the closed and damaged section of Highway 61, which had been tagged and drawn and painted on, to the point it was nicknamed the Graffiti Highway. Residents lobbied the Pennsylvania government, and by the end of 2020, the highway was buried in several tons of dirt and stone, hoping to discourage visitors. Some believe Centralia may soon be able to be resettled, but sinkholes are a constant threat. The ground and the pavement crack and shift, and twisting winds frequently drive gas clouds back into the town despite the fire now being miles away from the initial ignition point. And it's not done menacing the people of Pennsylvania. The nearby town of Aristes sits on top of the same coal deposit and has spent more than 60 years watching the smoke and the gas creep towards them. State and federal governments have deemed it too expensive and too dangerous to continue any containment or extinguishing attempts. And so, Aristes waits its turn to share in the fate of Centralia. It calls to my mind an excerpt from episode 1 of the Old Gods of Appalachia podcast. The mines went in deep, dark, and seeking. Coal was what they wanted, and coal is what they took. It was coal that started taking us as well. Everybody knows you don't climb into the dark earth without her swallowing a few of us whole. Her dark kiss planting seeds of decay in our lungs and blood. You don't take from the mother without her taking back. It was fair trade, though. She fed our kids, built newer, nicer houses, and paid more per hour than we could ever hope to dream. And all she asked in return is that we die slowly and without complaint. The fire hasn't directly caused any known deaths, but it killed and gutted the town, and nearby Burnsville to the south, which was abandoned soon after Centralia for fear of being burned out as well. Many former residents of Centralia suffer respiratory illnesses and complications from constant exposure to carbon monoxide. Many have developed various cancers. Even those that are not ill have lost properties and homes, their businesses, and their hope for the life they could have built. Most who took buyouts were not paid enough to relocate and start over.
The appraiser appraised our house at $43,000, but the government offered us $17,000. If we did not accept the offer to move, should they take our neighbor on our other side, they would never come back and give us a second chance. In other words, it was a take it or leave it situation. If we didn't accept it the first time, we would be stuck there.
Recent estimates suggest the Centralia mine fire may have enough fuel to burn for another 250 years or more. While it may not be the largest coal fire, that would be in India, and it's not the oldest. That's believed to be Mount Wingan in Australia, and it's burned for over 6,000 years. But Centralia possibly stands out in people's minds because it's a prime example of how recklessness, poor planning, and hubris can affect us for decades and even centuries. Thank you for joining me, gang, and I hope to see you all somewhere on the timeline.